Hello Rose, welcome to Villa Calcinaya. This is part of my library vineyard, and it's a project of mine that started a long time ago, like in '96 if I'm not mistaken. I am Sebastiano Capponi, and I am the winemaker and estate manager for Villa Calcinaya for this generation of the family. I say this generation because the family purchased Villa Calcinaya in 1524. And so we've been in the valley of Greve, which is the valley that you can see. And the Greve River runs right there in the bottom where the hay rolls are. The history of my family in this valley started, as I said, in 1524, when we purchased Calcinaya, which is that building that you see over there, with another 3 farmsteads, which were San Piero Alpino, Sepale and Bastignano, which is where we are now. Unfortunately, the house was already ruined in 1524, so it does not exist anymore. And here in the hilltop of Bastignano, I have planted part of my library. When I talk about library, I refer to the vineyards that kind of withhold all the material that I found in my research here at Calcinaya. Because being in a very old estate, it was run through the sharecropping system for many, many centuries. And in each of these houses that you see dotting the land, there'll be a family living in, and this family would be given a certain amount of land to cultivate. And the concept of the sharecropper was to produce food for his stable. And in order to produce food for his stable, every field was a mixture of different cultivation. Among the cultivation, of course, there were vine lanes, and these vine lanes, there were many different varietals, because Chianti Classico was never born as a single varietal, was always a mix of different grapes. Now, in the last 150 years, since the recipe codified by Barone di Casoli in 1872, Sangiovese is the king of the hill, is the main varietal, but Sangiovese has his court, and his court is formed by many, many, many members. And I found those members in those old vines, and thanks to the help of an ampelographer, so an expert on vines, Mr. Roberto Bandinelli, who helped me select all this material that was in these very old vineyards. And the reason why those vineyards stayed so long on the estate, it was because the sharecroppers stayed very long here, because there was enough land to be cultivated, so they did not abandon the houses. And the last sharecropper gave back the land to my father in 1990. So I grew up, I was born in 1971, and in 1990 I was 19 years old. So I grew up watching a system kind of declining and a new system starting, which was the direct management. And the main difference between the sharecropping system and the direct management, in the direct management you run the estate with employees. So you need to focus on certain products, make them, produce them, put it on the market, sell them, and pay your employees' salaries. Whereas in the history of sharecropping, the object of the exercise was to cultivate land to sustain your family. So I started this program because I found these very old vines, and I didn't want to lose the genetic material that was in these vines. And so I decided with the help of nurseries, to repropagate this material. And for example, in this vine lane, we are dealing with a very old varietal that was mentioned by Francesco Redi in Il Bacco in Toscana, which in one of his poems, and this is called mammolo. Mammolo. The word comes from the word of viola mammola, because the mammolo has this characteristic. Let me see if I can show you a grape. There we go. Here we go with grape. It has this characteristic of making very perfumed wines that blend well with Sangiovese, because they don't bring tannins to Sangiovese. Sangiovese is already a very tannic grape, so Mammolo brings a touch of freshness because of its acidity, and a very nice bouquet. So it makes the Sangiovese even more gentle and more approachable, even from a younger age. Other varietals that we grow are the Sanforte, which we can find a specimen here. Unfortunately, Sanforte was hit by the frost this year, so did not produce many grapes. There's a very little amount of grapes, as you can see. Unfortunately, this is we're dealing with nature, and sometimes nature doesn't allow us to bring food to our tables. But you know, this is a very nice specimen of Sanforte. And that's another third specimen called Occhio Rosso, which is a little down the hill. And Occhio Rosso is not yet a registered varietal. We've already done the DNA test, and the Professor Matti from the University of Florence told me that after the DNA test they found out that it exists in the Germoplasma toscano under different names. It was known as Occhio Dolce, Raponcello, or Morellino del Valdarno. So we are in the process of starting the process of registration for this varietal, and hopefully in the next few years this varietal will be registered. All these three I've mentioned, the Mammolo, the Sanforte, and Occhio Rosso, are vinified alone for the time being, just to see what they are the characteristic, and they're bottled on their own. So in the future, with more land dedicated to these varietals, we can start probably blending them with Sangiovese, and see how they interact together. And but the important thing about this collection, of course, was my research on Sangiovese. We selected more than 150 biotypes of this grape. So all the material that we've planted in the new vineyards comes from the estate, because the important thing today is not so much making a good wine. Quality is a necessary condition, but not sufficient. It's to make distinctive wines. So in order to make distinctive wines, we try to select our own material, things that have been here for centuries, millennials, and that haven't come from elsewhere, and trying to redevelop our own material so that the wine that we make could be one and unique. Thank you very much.